Anybody got any questions before?
Did you eat? Did you eat this morning?
I did. I just had a
What'd
little
you
pizza.
have? What?
Did I eat?
Yeah, what'd you have?
We had pizza. My whole team up in the room, we had pizza. Is it on my face or something?
No, I just want a lot of pizza? Like, how big is the team? What are we talking about?
I was 8 people in the room. You
have an 8-man team or 8-women team? Or
I
is it,
surround myself with really smart people.
All right.
That's what you do.
Pizza, come on, buddy.
Okay, one question. Let's hear it really quick.
Hi, I'm Ricardo from San Francisco. I would like to know which favorite moment you was in the national soccer.
My favorite moment of the national team? I can tell you my most unfavorite moment was. It was about the 70 times that I had to wake up next to this guy. It was a lot weird. It was different. He had the beard and favorite moment with the national team. Honestly, it was jogging around at the Rose Bowl after we beat Colombia with no shoes on in front of all my family, 40 miles from where I grew up. It was a surreal moment because nobody expected us to beat Colombia. And then, of course, our coach, Bora Milutinovic, walked up to me because I was running around barefoot, and it was 120 degrees, if you don't remember, on the field. And Bora looked at me and said, "So unprofessional." So we just beat Colombia, man. But it was, that's it. Because I did get to wave to, I had one of those Jim Craig moments. For some of you who remember the hockey team, I actually got to see my parents, so it's kind of cool. It's a good moment. I'll go with that. All right, can we start?
Yeah, we can. All right, welcome. Thank you for everybody. If you're just coming in, come on in. We will have a little conversation here, and then at the end of it, plenty of time for questions. We have this contraption here. You can throw it, and I will just call on you. I will ask that you identify yourself, who you are, and where you're from before we do that. My name is Alexi, and this is Eric Wynalda. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Eric, you said, and I want to make sure I get this quote right, I played for my country 106 times, and the entire time I hated the Federation. As you mentioned, we traveled the world, and we played with the national team for a long time. That's certainly not the way that I feel about the Federation, and not to say that we didn't have problems and difficulties, and that I wasn't angry at times with the Federation, but where did this start? How did it manifest itself in terms of this entire time not getting along with the Federation?
Well, I mean, I was in there a little bit longer than you, but maybe it should be changed to, I hated the relationship that I had with the Federation more so than anything else. It should be such an honor to play for your country, and it is, but it complicates things when you don't feel that the Federation has your back. I've felt that with on the women's side of things too. I've talked to them, and they felt the same way at times. But I just wish that was a better relationship. I mean, hate maybe is a strong word because I tell my kids that we strongly dislike. So,
well, give us some examples of why you strongly dislike the United States Soccer Federation.
Look at what we went through in 1995, when we went through a very painful process of we had a contract that we thought in good faith, and this was, I guess, about 4 years into your tenure, and I'd been there a little longer, not much, but we went to the Copa America. We had a deal in place that was going to compensate the players a certain number. We negotiated that on good faith, and it was pulled out from underneath us. The terms were changed, and then we were expected to compete in a massive competition and give our best effort. And I felt like the team, one, we deserved better than that. We sat in that wonderful little lobby of Paysandu and didn't practice. We stuck together. We were a good team. But the reality was, is this better? Just get rid of this.
You get to do it again.
All right. No. Was it not even on? I couldn't tell. I'll start over. Okay, here, just take it. You know, this never happens at Fox. It's okay. But we were going to sit out. We were going to sit out on principle, and that was a byproduct of a conversation and a bad relationship that it really came back to communication. We could have done a better job, and the Federation could have done a better job. And I just felt slighted, and I think the other guys did too. We went out on the field hours after agreeing to a deal, which the Federation changed their minds and decided to comply with our needs. And I think that deal actually still exists to this day, which is something that, to be said about putting your foot down. But we beat Chile, and we did deliver. It was the first time that the U.S. national team beat a South American team on South American soil. And it was such a proud moment for us as players. But then the guys that were trying to cheat us with the deal wanted to hug us when it was over. And it just didn't, that always stuck with me. Because there was nothing real about that hug. And I'm all about the hug. Actually,
you're a hugger, I know.
So I just felt, even back then, that this has always been a relationship that could have been better. I'm not saying it's the sole reason that drove me to try to change things or run for the presidency, but that certainly is a cultural issue that I intend to change.
But you can certainly recognize that your time with the United States Soccer Federation and the things that you did get from the Soccer Federation helped change your life.
Yes, of course, and I don't want to come across as if I'm not incredibly grateful, but I do believe that when you get that opportunity to play for your country, it is a culmination of so much work, and that stems from your friends, your family, to anybody that was included in your life. I mean, how much do you celebrate it when one of your players does something? You want to celebrate it. You want to be a part of it. That is a massive component of when you finally get to the pinnacle of your career and you get to play for your country. You want it to be perfect. Clearly it can't be, but my experience with the national team was a tainted one, and unfortunately I have to admit that.
So now you want to be president of U.S. Soccer.
Right.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. You were a youth soccer player, so you grew up in the American youth soccer system.
Yep.
A high school soccer player, a collegiate soccer player, a national team soccer player.
Yep.
You have worked with as a coach and as a GM within the system,
Yep.
and yet there seems to be this belief that you are this outsider. In what way are you the outsider if you have been part of this system, you helped build the system, you benefited from the system, that you now seem to want to change? Are you an insider or an outsider?
An outsider or insider? I think that what helps me a great deal, and many of the conversations that when we embarked on this endeavor to find out and to what really are the issues, and I did not know we were this messed up. And what I found is that having the ability to, as a parent, as someone who's worked in this space, who's been a coach of under 16, because I'm a dad, to have worked as a director of coaching, to have worked as a coach, to be a sporting director, to run a club, to understand the trials and tribulations of running a tournament. These are all the things that the youth space deals with. And being able to really go in with that experience gives me an element of understanding of what their problems are. And only when you have to identify that there is a problem, but understanding the problem is a great advantage. So even though, and then that translates, of course, to the professional space, and being a coach at an amateur level, being a sporting director at the amateur level, being on the sidelines, a couple hundred times helps you a great deal to understand what coaches go through, the training sessions, the preparation, all of that. To have coached with the national team programs, to understand the process of what it takes to qualify. Not only just qualify, but then play in a World Cup and the difference between those two. You're going to need those kind of experiences if you're going to be expected to pick or select the right national team coaches. So I can't. I can't stress this enough. I think I have a perfect nothing's perfect, but a better understanding of all of the facets that not everything needs changing. I'm not the candidate that represents blow it all up, because that's not me, but we are in a stage where we need to evolve. And I think that my experiences from the past allow me to give us a future.
Well, give us a couple examples then when you go into these rooms and you speak to these people about what they want as it relates to change.
All right, youth coaches, how many we got? Let's see. Right, see, there you go. You guys are all getting along. Well, I would start a fight, but we're already in the middle of one. I think from the perspective of trying to understand how we can best service our young players, we're not. We are fragmented, and what we need is structure. What we need is compliance. What we need is the ability to be on the same page. Not which entity is better than the other one. Not, hey, you got to be in an academy or we're never going to see your kids. That comes from the federation, by the way. It was bad enough before the academies showed up. You all know that. But
So the academies made it worse?
I just saw 5 people nod their heads and go, yeah, you see that?
The academies made it worse?
Yes. That's the simple answer there. The United States Soccer Federation doesn't understand their role. Their role is not to get into the development of our players. That's your job. And you guys know how that works. And if we want to talk about one of their problems might be is why don't our players have personality is because we're putting them in sterile environments. And we don't celebrate that the greatest assets that we have is the good people and the coaches who are getting a bad rap right now that allow our players to within a developmental environment or climate that's where you flourish. That's where you try things. That's where you, not in a constant tryout. That's where you play safe and the games get sterile.
But what does a sterile environment look like to you in a soccer sense?
Well, okay, well, here you go. Watch this. Referees. How many referees we got in a row? All right, so in order to get better as a referee, one of the things that the academy system has had a massive effect on is what our referees are expected to do in their development. So you go to a sterile environment, in my opinion, if you really watch some of these games, and my daughter, this is another great example. My daughter's 13 years old. She plays in the DA, so I watch these games on a consistent basis. So one of the things that you recognize is that there's too much safe play. And the games themselves are a lot of players playing not to make a mistake instead of trying to make something happen. And when that happens, it's very challenging for a referee to figure out what a foul is. You go ref some of the adult games. Yeah, go get the over 30 game. You want to be a better ref? Those guys are playing for something. You'll learn in a hurry. But that's something that I recognize and I understand that the referees are getting a bad rap because we've basically let them drive a go-kart and then throw them in a Ferrari and say go. And they've never been in a Ferrari before. So it's hard for some of these scenarios for our referees to go from sleep to sprint. So creating better environments, to answer the question about sterile environments, the academies do not provide that.
And as president, how are you going to change those sterile environments?
Well, I think it's a great question because I think that what we've gone away from is what I just alluded to, is allowing the clubs to create the competitive environments and not determine. And one of the things that we talked about earlier today was the United States Soccer Federation should not be in the business of picking winners and losers, and that's what the academy is. It's telling you who the best is instead of allowing that process through competitive games to manifest itself. So those climates need to change, and what that means is the academy system needs to know its role. It doesn't mean it shouldn't exist, but in the broader picture, the academy system needs to be rebooted because it's not helping.
But there is competition in the academy system, so
sure.
It's not as if they're just not playing soccer and then picking players.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you said that competition was important, and that if the academy system is a situation that you have a problem with, they are still playing each other. Ultimately, a team.
Right.
Ultimately, a team is part of a competition, and then you pick the players that you think are best.
All right. So, when we engage in the idea and a lot of the youth coaches who are here know that the academies do not represent the best players. Would we all agree on that? Thank you. Now, there are different platforms and different reasons why we're not seeing the best players. One of them might very well be that we've determined as a federation that our kids can't play high school. Now, I've got a problem with that because what has happened there is we are determining the level by a selection process which is not founded on merit. What that means is, and maybe this will, how many high school coaches we got? All right, your games are being, or the value, or the level, I should say, of your game is determined by the worst player on the field. Does that make sense? Let me say it again. The level of play is determined by the worst player on the field. And that's not fair. That's not fair to the couple of kids who, because of different circumstances, are 18 years old or 17 years old, and they can't afford club, but they play high school for two reasons: because they love playing with their friends, and because it's the only opportunity they got. And when we stop paying attention to all of our players, they fall through the cracks. And that's what's wrong with the academy system. It's not doing not doing the job of recognizing where all the talent is in the first place. And then, I hope people are with me on this one. I certainly am. We went over this a couple of times. I was in a group. I'm not going to name names, but the thought process was, as a federation, we need to get at the table, and we need to figure out how to determine whether this is a good idea or not. Meaning, are kids allowed to play in high school and in the academy system? My question is what table are you talking about? It's not this table, it's not a boardroom table, it's the dinner table. Those families get to decide whether they're gonna be able to play. We don't get to mandate that. We are cheating our kids out of a social experience that, I don't know, how was your high school experience? Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I did.
How much?
A lot.
Okay. Did you enjoy playing high school soccer?
The soccer was secondary. The experience was what I enjoyed. I benefit, but I became.
My point. You just made my point. And we should all thank Detroit for molding this human being into what we see today.
So why do you think the decision was ultimately made?
To make things easier for the federation. And I think if there's folks that are a part of U.S. Club, for example, what they're doing, they provide great opportunities for our kids. And when Christian Pulisic gets recognized on a trip that he was on with U.S. Club, and the U.S. Soccer Federation can't figure out a way to get credit for it, they start shutting down that as well. So now you have a problem with the federation wanting credit instead of celebrating what we are and what we can do. We are our worst enemy sometimes, but I don't blame that on the club system. I blame that on the federation. They're getting in the way of progress.
All right, we're going to skip around to a bunch of different things because I know we don't have you for very long. But
you're going to have hard questions.
No, let's talk about promotion relegation. You heard of this
Yeah.
promotion relegation thing?
Used to work at the youth level too.
Yesterday I was talking to Sunil Gulati, and he said, we as the federation aren't going to be able to legislate promotion relegation, and anyone who thinks we, the United States Soccer Federation, can, without everyone's agreement, is going to end up with 9 judges in Washington. Obviously talking about lawsuits going on. Promotion relegation has been part of your platform, something that you've talked about. Do you think that promotion relegation is a realistic possibility in the future under your watch as president?
As president, let's make this very simple. In my recent conversations with our current FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, we're going to comply. That's the one part we don't realize. We are not FIFA compliant. That is a big component or a big reason why we're having issues, and people think that the 2026 bid is in the bag. It might not be. We've been given a 20-year exemption to get our act together. Promotion and relegation is a part of the bylaws of FIFA, and we have never complied with it. So as the president, it's a simple conversation. Hello, Gianni, we're ready to comply. Now, that statement is, whether we're going to end up with 9 judges in court, there's 2 realities to it. And I think that what I've been encouraged by is that this country and our league is also comprised of some business people who want to know if there's an alternate way. And when you explain it to them, and they recognize that maybe the way that we're doing things worked in the beginning, maybe 96, 97, 98, maybe all the way through 2004 or 5, it made sense. But this country's come a long way, and our ownership groups have changed as well, and they're entertaining the idea of looking at a means of making money as opposed to consistently losing it.
So what happens when that comes down? By the way, a mandate, if you will, from FIFA that comes through you as president of U.S. Soccer. What happens to the soccer landscape as it relates to leagues, all the leagues that don't have promotion relegation?
Well, hold on, because right now, if you really want to think about this, within the FIFA, well, under our umbrella, we are only servicing 18 venues. That's it. There are only 18 places, because New York has 2 teams, LA has 2 teams. And last time I checked, as far as the federation president, Canada is not my problem. So there's 3 Canadian teams. That's not good enough. How does it affect? It affects all of us.
New York has 3 teams.
Yes. Okay. Well, good move there. So my point is this. What about the USL? What about the NPSL? What about the teams that have an opportunity, have been never given an opportunity to even get their act together because there's no light at the end of the tunnel? We've spent all of our time servicing 18 markets. When you open it up, we have unleashed the power of what we are. We want to talk about these academy systems. They're only in 8, really, truly should only be at this point in 18. What happens if we have 600 clubs who are given the opportunity, and that's the key word, to get their act together and see what their fan base is and enjoy the game the way it's supposed to?
But how do you know it's not just going to destroy what has already been created?
I got somebody started clapping. Look, I mean, look, everybody in this room, we could go through the room and we'll find, people, well, I'm 400 miles from an MLS team. I'm 350 miles. And what does that mean to them? That means that we haven't done a good enough job of opening up our system, which allows, this to be done appropriately. I've said this before, maybe you've heard me say it, I'll say it again. You will not, from an elitist system, you will never create an elite player.
So if MLS or any other league does not want to comply with this, what do? You take away the sanction? As president. I know you can't do it individually, but what do you support doing?
Look, the president, and let's keep that. There's been a lot of questions about what kind of president I would be, and one of the things that you have to remember is that all of these things, there is a board. There is comprised of all facets of a very diverse way of thinking. So there's a voting process that happens. I think we've already seen a president who likes to make his decisions on his own. I'm not that guy. I'm somebody who's very inclusive. As you can see, I've surrounded myself with a lot of intelligent people, from experts in their field, because when you have a problem, you have to ask the expert what to do. Now, look, when you get into a situation where it's a mandate or you're going to, these are all the discussions that we've never had before. And that's how you end up in court, by the way.
So you think it's going to go to court if you were to do that? No,
I think that we are already in court because we have not done a very good job facilitating the professional game. Now we've talked about promotion and relegation. I think the NASL almost just got, the entire league just got relegated. I mean, there's opportunity is the key word, and I think education as well. When the plan is presented, and there might be a transition period, I think that the mindset needs to change. But that comes through an understanding of how the business needs to change.
Yeah, so when you're explaining to them, what is your pitch or your sell to an MLS owner, current MLS owner, with why this would help him or her with regards to the business?
Well, some of it, we've become a location-based entertainment business. Now, I know you're an entertainer and you love that part, but I would like to see our league be represented by competitive merit. Competitive merit is how we get better, folks. Not by just putting on a game and hoping people show up. That's the difference. You want to know why we didn't qualify? Keep thinking about that thought alone. I think the pitch is very simple. There's a part of this which we've never engaged in. And I know you want to ask me the business questions, and I can't wait, because I don't think we've ever engaged in the business of soccer. That's a really big problem. So, and I'm sure all of you have heard me talk about changing the schedule, which makes us also FIFA compliant. All of these things start to allow us to go down a road that we've never been down, that allows us to explore the real essence of what we can be. That's what we need to do.
Which are what? Because we talked earlier about youth soccer and this idea that these edicts are coming down without any involvement, and with the realization that for some people what works here doesn't necessarily work here. and yet you're talking about mandating from the top. So at some point, I would think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you want to try to convince the people that are in place that this is going to be better for them. So I'm just trying to understand exactly what you are promising MLS owners or anybody when it comes to promotion relegation.
Anything, but that's not the right word. But I think that the explanation of how it needs to work, and promotion and relegation is something that we have a tendency to just go right to the doomsday. We believe that, oh my God, relegation, what happens to my organization if we go down a level? We have created a very different set of rules, arbitrary for that matter, when it comes to the second division about what exactly a second division should be. Now, if we're going to make the soccer better, and that's what I am proposing, it is necessary for us to be more inclusive. Let's think about this. We let 14 teams into the playoffs. We've seen it time and time again. Time and time again, we have a team that's in second or third place. They all look around the room and they go, yeah, we're making the playoffs, no problem. FC Dallas, 9-game skid. This is what happens when you don't integrate the competitive nature that makes the soccer better. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to continue until we figure out a way to, one, get FIFA compliant, change our schedule, and allow our players to really realize their potential.
What about the schedule change before we move on? What's your pitch to focus on why the change of the schedule would help?
All right, so this is what happens when you have a playoff system and you have too many teams. I think that one of the questions which will be proposed to someone like Kathy Carter would be, well, what's the vision for MLS? And the immediate response will be, we're going to get to 32 teams. What that means is that's the ceiling, guys. And we're talking about 18 markets. 32 teams, that's the ceiling. That's the only people we're interested in helping. That's it. That's where we're going. Now, when you change the schedule, you're going to have to realize that there's only so many windows. So people are going to complain about the weather. They think that that's going to be an issue. And you and I both know this. If we had a choice, play in the cold or play in the heat, which one do you choose? You choose the heat. I saw you fall apart. You melted in Dallas. Don't you even start with that. But the plan, when you propose this, is when you're starting in March, ending in December. Let's look at it from this level, okay, from the professional level. You start in bad weather, you finish in worse weather. You never know where the finals is going to be because you have to wait. Fans can't even plan for that. You're not going to have the commercial dollars representing a final because your back page news, all of that money has been allocated to other sports. And now you're going to play in December. And then it's even better. You're going to, if you didn't make the playoffs, you got knocked out in late October, you're going to sit out November, December, January, and February. I made this analogy before, but that's like leaving your bike out in the backyard in Portland. It's not going to work when you get to March. There's going to be more rust built up on that thing. You can't do that to professional players, but we do. The proposed schedule has a starting point of late July, a break just before Christmas, and then you allow the athletes to essentially get some rest time, and then you get back after it again, starting after NFL goes away. And we can do that now. We're in Nashville. We have teams in markets. We have a couple of roofs, for crying out loud. There's not a problem with offsetting the schedule. Finishing at the end of May and June helps us in many ways, all right? One, it makes us a part of the FIFA calendar. But two, think about the opportunity. How many state association presidents or somebody who works within a state association are here? These are the people I'm really talking to. They're voting, by the way.
I know, yeah.
But the opportunity that's lost when we have a federation that's servicing only 18 markets is the following. There is the opportunity to have international games on our soil in July. Why don't we do more of them? Because Major League Soccer does not want you to be exposed to anything but their product. And it's a protection policy that disallows us from really engaging into another facet of the business, which means that game that happened in Cincinnati last year, I think it was Valencia, 35,000 people showed up on a Wednesday night. Why was it Wednesday night, Lex? Because they had a schedule playing right through the summer and Saturday wasn't available. Some of you may not know this. When 35,000 people show up, a percentage of that goes back to the state association directly and helps pay for the programs that you are trying to help. When you talk about pay to play, this is how you're not getting cooperation from the federation and or the professional game. Cincinnati should have had 4 games. They should have had an additional $200,000 in their bank that they would be able to start figuring out how to create more programs on the youth and the adult side to grow the game. That's a business decision. That is turning away from, that's leaving money on the table. That is just not acceptable anymore. And it really it is simply because we have a schedule that's getting in our own way.
Let's talk more about the business. Soccer United Marketing, a lot of talk about Soccer United Marketing, the relationship that it has now, that it has had, the principals involved. In your adventure here of running for president, what have you learned about Soccer United Marketing that troubles you?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's directly connected with Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer isn't really, didn't they give you the whole note about not turning your phone off, buddy? It's okay. Just kidding.
Lapse.
But we have a business model that is not really about the soccer. It is about Soccer United Marketing and looking where that money is coming from. It's not coming from Major League Soccer, but it's been given to Major League Soccer through the Mexican national team, through other contracts. It's not a direct reflection of what we're really trying to accomplish. Now, part of this relationship in itself is kind of flawed because we have this deal until 2022, and the other question might be, is this fair value? I can tell you without hesitation, this is not fair value for our product. And Soccer United Marketing determined that with a deal that they made without a fair bidding process. So everybody else was shut out of the deal, and we don't know what our value is, and I can certainly tell you it's more than what that number represents, because we didn't have the best business practices or the policies within our federation. This is alarming. This is something that a lot of people don't know. And they did this earlier. I'm going to do it right now. Who knows what Soccer United Marketing is specifically? Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's only like 10% of you. It just surprises me. There's a relationship that is unhealthy, but and I think that one of the other spheres here, when you really look at what U.S. soccer should be doing from the federation standpoint, is and we're gonna see this happen when I become president. I almost said in the event of becoming president, but the Lamar Hunt Open Cup is a property worth 0. Why? Why have we never figured out a way to celebrate all facets on all levels? How many of you enjoy the FA Cup? All right, so we're going to do that. We're going to have an opportunity out there, and we're going to throw a big number at it, and there will be a fair bidding process, but I've already been very encouraged about how much interest there is. Now, the problem that I have with it is that we're still sitting here 21 years into a league, and we've never even thought about the idea of capitalizing or at least figuring out a way to insert a massive amount of money through all of our clubs. That just astonishes me as well.
Okay, so I want to make sure you're saying that the sum deal that's in place right now is not maximizing the revenue when it comes to
what? There was never
what?
a fair bidding process. We would never know. They said, let's do a deal. Well, I'll take it. Now, and I know Kathy's stance on this, and this was really unfortunate to hear her say that, is, well, we should consider ourselves lucky that we have the money that's going to be coming in consistently until 2022 because we failed. I'm just going to say this out loud. We are in the soccer business, not the business of soccer. The soccer has never come first. Soccer, this is what we're talking about. And for a long time, everybody, we've decided that we're going to engage in a mindset that it's imperative that we figure out ways to not facilitate a way that we can be sustainable. Soccer United Marketing represents help from the outside that is an insurance policy, and it's not a fair representation of our potential as a national team and or our product.
Do you think it's a conflict of interest, the relationship?
I think that's clear.
You mentioned while you were talking about Open Cup, and you had said, and I want to make sure I got this correct, you're working on a deal that would inject billions into the Open Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So where is this money coming from, and why is this something that would happen?
There has been outside interest. Now, this does not represent, and needs to be very clear, that this is not another hijacking through a Soccer United marketing relationship. That is not what this is. But when you, and I'll discuss this openly. When we had a businessman like Ricardo Silva offer $4 billion to try and change the way that we addressed our schedule and television, and so this is fair value, right? I can't believe that no one's even said this, but he's actually just established the value of what he thinks the league is worth, which is probably somewhere around 20 times more than what we're currently getting. Now, the fact that outside sources have taken an interest in the Lamar Hunt Open Cup as a property recognizes that just that we have the potential that we've never really tapped into. How many of you have seen this Barcelona Academy? It's coming in Long Island, right? So they're going to invest $60 million into a facility. Sorry? Long Island, sorry, what did I say? Long Island, yeah. Oh, I did say Long Island. All right, well, thanks. You're correcting me as much as he does. So let's look into that. Why is Barcelona coming here? Why? Exactly. Instead of creating and having to pay for a facility and pay they invite players, and those players are taken care of, and they have a staff, and it's going to cost them a lot of money. They probably got together and said, let's just build this in America. Those W's will pay us to be there. And that's what we're going to do. Now, here's the best part. This is Barcelona recognizing the immense potential that we have as players. And people are going to say $60 million, that's a lot of money. That's one player. That's one player if they get it right.
But you're not suggesting that you have a way to stop that happening.
No, we're going to create that same environment everywhere else. One of the things you forget about Major League Soccer by playing through this summer, what happens when Christian Pulisic, lands in your lap? What happens when a kid shows a lot of potential? We have the ability to engage into a global transfer market that we don't touch. And that is, to me, and I was very discouraged by one of the other candidates offering the idea that Beckham and Thierry Henry should be celebrated. That's $65 million that we gave two guys to come here and retire. And then we don't qualify for a World Cup, and we don't realize that we're not taking care of our own. I get the entertainment value of that, but this is a country that has immense potential. I don't know what Christian's number's at now. Who wants him to go to Manchester United? Hold on. Who wants him to go to Liverpool? Hey, I'm surprised by that. Yeah, go play for Klopp.
Where do you want him to go?
Where do I want him to go? I want him to go into one place. Look, and maybe Christian's fantastic, and that's clearly his decision, but the reality of what Christian now represents, because we have a kid that we can create a superstar out of. And what will happen, most likely, sorry Liverpool, is they'll probably recognize that Manchester United is a global brand opportunity to really put him to a whole new level. And so, do I want him to go there? That's not why I want him to go there, but if he does go there, I understand.
One of the topics that all the candidates are talking about is the relationship between the United States women's national team and the United States men's national team, and fair pay, equal pay, equity when it comes to that.
That's not a relationship between us and them, and it's never an us and them thing.
Well, as it relates to what the men have made and are making in that sense, how did we find ourselves here? How did we get here with this inequality?
Somebody at some point said equal pay. That's what happened. How many in this room would raise your hand and say that you wouldn't support equal pay? Oh, this would be fun. That's what I thought. In this day and age, that's is that Bo? I knew you'd stick your hand up.
So you support equal pay then?
Look, I support equal treatment, and one of the things that we've never got, and if you talk to them, the women have had their complaints over the years. And again, they don't have we've never done a really good job from the federation standpoint of fostering a better relationship. I think that, you know, if our guys are flying business or first, so are they. And just think about that for a second. They win everything. They're the current world champions, and they're flying in coach. Come on, enough of that.
But what about actual pay?
Well, I mean,
because that's treatment.
You know,
but what about actual
okay,
money?
I might have misspoke. You know, I mean, I got in the beginning of this thing, and what I want to say about that is I'm getting more politically savvy, which I know that's impressing you. But the reality is that I said I'd rip that thing up, and the only reason why I would want to rip that up is to go back into a room and come out with a fair deal. I just think it's in this day and age, and all this, the way that they have represented this country, better than we could have ever asked for, and they've never been given a fair shake. They've never been respected for their accomplishments. And my line on that is, even for the women who have played for our country and no longer are part of the team, we've done a really poor job of including them in the process. We can't have a future until we start recognizing and celebrating our past, and that is represented more than anything on the women's game.
Our men.
No, somebody start clapping so y'all have to.
Back there. As far as representing the country, our men's futsal, beach, and our Paralympic team represent the country. So would that equity and that equality apply to them too?
This is where, you know, when you start trying to generate revenue for the state associations and interests and whatnot, this is where we miss the boat here. We're turning away from a lot of opportunity where the federation can essentially become a much better partner in that regard. And one of the, I'm not going to get into the weeds here, but if you really look at what the federation is capable of on the business side, we've always been in the funding business. It's hard, you know, you've got to figure out how you're going to fund a project, but they've never, and we've looked at it, and my team of guys, and having the ability to leverage your assets to be in the finance business is something that could really pay dividends in the end. Now look, I'm a huge proponent of all three, but you know, more so, you know, not more so than the others, but futsal has really been put on the back shelf. And you look at the way the rest of the world develops their talent, it's out of necessity because you can't find anything but dirt. But sometimes you find a flat surface, and that's why Ronaldinho's and Wynaldas are produced, because that's, and even Christian Pulisic for that matter. But I think that there's a massive opportunity for the federation to start being a better partner to growing the game, especially at those three levels.
Should they fly first class? Should they have the same per diem as the men's and women's team? Should they have at least the ability to achieve equal when it comes to the amount of money that they earn?
Yeah, I knew you'd do this, but these are all looking at schedules, looking at what they represent, where they need to go. All of those numbers need to be crunched and evaluated. But again, we also understanding what it means when our U.S. national team performs well, and it's important for us to make sure that we take care of their needs. But I've heard some horror stories already about our Paralympic team, and I'm discouraged by that. I think the federation can do a much better job, but yeah, if they win the whole thing, I think they should fly them anywhere they want, first class.
All right, let's talk about this adventure as we talked about. I'm assuming that you've learned a lot in all of your talks and all of your meetings. I guess a simple question. Do you think you're going to win?
Yes.
Why?
I think that this election has essentially brought up a very important component of this. The adult, the youth. This, as a state association, this is your chance to have a voice. Everybody keeps talking about change. This is it. This is your opportunity to move the meter. This will be something that we look back on as a lost opportunity if we don't. Puts a soccer person with a soccer IQ in charge of this, because I believe that until we have a vision and until we have a real direction on the soccer side of things, the business is going to take care of itself. It is. It's actually going to get a lot better, because you get the product right, your business doesn't fail.
A few more questions, and then we'll open it up. Do you think that this election process is fair?
That's a great question. It's been manipulated for about 12 years.
In what way?
Well, I mean, the whole nomination process and all of the, it's an odd way to select. However, I do think, in retrospect, if the way it's been built and who gets a vote and what the percentages are, the understanding that MLS clearly 14% of the vote, whether that's that's clearly higher than anybody else, which means I start at 86. So that's I'm only dealing with the 86%. I'm not getting that 14, which is fine.
So is it stacked against you in an unfair way to the extent that you would change it if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, that's all subject to other opinions for sure. I do think that in the past, to give you some insight on how you win this election, you get the pro vote, you get the athletes council, you get 2 or 3 state associations, you win. So what that means is there's 597 people who vote, and all you have to do is get 6. So do you think that's stacked? Is that kind of odd? Now, the reason why I brought up the rest of it is the reality that the adult and the youth have the ability to have a voice right now. And I think they know now that voting for me gives them a chance. Voting for the establishment, and some of you know this from the state association level, know that you're going to have the carpet ripped right underneath you. The very people that they're asking you for your vote, you will not even be in those positions within 2 or 3 years. And that's something that concerns me. It's a different plan. I believe in us. I believe in this country. I believe in the people that understand their businesses, understand their states. We have taken a different approach from the Federation standpoint, where we've just overlooked it and said, all right, dummy, you don't know what you're doing. Here's what you need to do. That's not the way this works. So I think the state associations understand the predicament that they're in, and that I represent the hope that they need to have right now.
Shifting gears one more time here, you associated yourself with Ricardo Silva. We talked about this a little bit earlier. And you've talked about, and you've been open and honest, that he is helping to fund some of your campaign.
It wasn't a big number, but certainly we've gotten, when you get in this kind of thing, I got to tell you, the first 40, 50 days, it was Hilton points and mileage, man. And I still have.
But why did you align with him, I guess, is the question.
Well, I think there's other contributors that are really hoping for change, and these aren't agendas. Let's not mix that. That is certainly not what we're talking about. We're talking about their belief that change is necessary, and making a contribution, a small donation, is what happened here.
But
now,
they have a version of change, so that in that sense there is an agenda for everybody that wants change.
Right, and I think that to a certain extent, aligning, when you're in alignment with your ideology, then that makes sense. But this is, for anybody to make some sort of allegation that was in any way a loaded promise or agenda-driven would be silly. And look, again, understanding that the president has a function within the Federation. Maybe it's a misunderstood function right now, but the president is an idea guy. He's a vision guy. He's a direction guy. But he's always, he or she, I should say, is subject always to 15 board members who have a vote and will constantly be a part of the process of change. So maybe the idea of bringing money to the table, bringing a vision or an idea to the table is always subject to, you have to convince the board, and the board has to be behind you. So that's a bigger challenge, but it's turning away from the idea that there are people who want to insert massive funding into our programs. That would be silly for me not to take that call.
Best and worst thing that Sunil Gulati has done in his tenure?
The best thing that's...
and worst.
I think when you really go back in time and you look at how much has happened and the fact that we may have outgrown ourselves now, the foundation of how far we've come, the man deserves an immense amount of credit. And to get to this point, and it's easy to throw rocks at him now, And I certainly have made some mistakes along the way because I still need to work with Sunil when I win. And then we've had our fights, and we've been fighting for 30 years, so this is nothing new. But to get us to where we are now, the fact that he may not be the right guy to take us into the future is irrelevant. He still has built this thing from the ground up. And I think all of us, especially the ones that have been around for 20, 30 years, remember the days when the state associations were putting on the games. They were loaning the money just to make sure that you and I got on the field. And things have changed a great deal through that hard work and just how many miles he's put on the road or in the air to get us to where we are, to allow this country to have the appetite for the game that we have, to have the interest and the potential. The hardest part about that is we still haven't realized our potential, but that doesn't mean that Sunil didn't have a huge part in getting us to a spot where we are today. So you should all give the man a hand. I know he's gotten beat up, but give him a hand for that.
Now what did he do? What did he get wrong? What did he get wrong?
Let's hammer the guy. No. The worst thing that I think, and that this is kind of what I represent, is the ability to be more inclusive. I think that I rely on good information. One of the most important parts about being president is being a good listener. And I think that maybe that's where he let us down. And maybe that it's because he's been involved so long that it was deemed noise. And maybe the monotony of the job and just all the things that have happened and from then to now made things a little stale for him. But you know, you always gotta listen. You stop listening, you stop learning, you stop learning, you stop living.
Well, let's listen to some people out here. We have some questions from the audience. There's a young man in red there. I'm going to throw this. It will not hurt. When you're done, pass it to the next person. Pass that back. Thanks.
That really was
Give us your name and
really was the plan,
who you are.
Throwing things at people.
Yeah.
My name is Santiago. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Foot Solo Experience,
Nice.
Former player for the University of Louisville. And in my perspective, the fundamental component for having a competitive national team and league is empowering and incentivizing the clubs to produce professional players. Twofold question: what are your thoughts on training compensation and solidarity payments? And what do you think you would do to implement that if that's your vision? We support you at American Soccer United, so I think we know the answer, but I want everyone to hear it. And secondly, how's your son enjoying his Foot Solo sidekick?
Oh my God. Now I just remembered who you are. My son is loving that. And thank you. He's wrecked some furniture and a couple of lamps too. So
Not liable for that.
no, you know. Look, I think that the solidarity payment is going to be it's going to be well within the discussion over the next couple of years. It's a tricky issue, but it's not feasible. It's not possible if we don't have a more structured environment. Like you said, the more teams that are involved, and we want to be able to celebrate the production of a player. And what the system that we've created now puts us in a spot where a kid just bounces from team to team to team, and that the shirt doesn't matter anymore. It's just the game. And the love of not just the game gets lost, but also the loyalty to a club. Now, we're going to go through that process, right? You're going to have to break it into percentages of who gets what. If the kid gets produced and sold for millions of dollars, it's a really complex issue. But I think that it will exist. It's the reason why the German scouts have come over here to get Weston McKinney. It's why they got Pulisic situation's a little different. But we just saw it with Sargent, and we're going to see it again. We're going to see it again and again and again. And it's something that, if it's about credit, and I certainly wouldn't offer that, but it's about building clubs that can keep kids in a spot where it makes sense when that transaction happens. But that's not distant future, but it certainly is something that needs to be addressed. It's a great question.
Let's go to the next section over there. Oh, there we go.
Eric, this is Steve.
I know.
Question about our American coaches. The Federation may be investing in American-born coaches, so it's not so expensive to get licensing. It seems we always go overseas to get the coaches for our national teams and such. Is there a way that you feel that the Federation could one offer more coaching education from some of our experienced coaches like
Yes.
Bruce that are no longer in that role, and then also how it can be affordable?
Steve, it's a great question. I think that we, in the past, whether that be through the likes of someone like Bora Milutinovic or very recently with Jurgen Klinsmann, there was this belief that we still needed to be taught the game, that we don't know what we're doing. I would argue against that. I mean, maybe Bruce is a part of that, maybe even Bob Bradley is a part of that, but I think that this country has invested already a lot of time, effort, and money in creating an identity through our coaches. We get a bad rap sometimes, and then when we make it as difficult as we possibly can for them to go through that licensing process. If you think about it, the system's strange. The majority of the coaches that get thrown into this sphere, if it's a kid played well in high school, played well in college, or he gets to college, right? Now he's, maybe let's say he's on a scholarship or doesn't have a scholarship, doesn't matter. But we convinced him now to drop out of college and forego his education to become a coach. I mean, to be a professional. So now he's a professional and it doesn't work out. Where's that guy gonna go? Where does he go? And now he finds out that it's gonna cost him just as much money as his school costs to figure out a way to be licensed in a way that's gonna make sense, that he can get a job, because the industry and the market value of our coaches is dictating what we call pay to play. Now, with all that being said, and I know I just went a little, into a whole other complex issue there. The reality is that we don't do a good job of recognition of our professional coaches. Why? Again, we are only servicing 18 markets. What happens when we create opportunities, not just for our players, but our coaches in those environments where they can grow, and then we can pay attention and recognize. We've seen tons of coaches come up through the ranks. Those platforms aren't there. It's a very competitive market, and people are getting paid at times too much money to be in the youth space when they really should be in the pro space. So it's amazing when you really dig into this and you realize how much of an effect the way that we do things affects the way that we do things the wrong way. And the referees is a great example. The coaching is a great example. And we certainly aren't servicing our kids well enough at the moment.
Over here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your voice. It's spot on, and I think we all agree. I guess it's kind of a common question. I brought this up in a couple other sessions. Most of your opponents are, against the, development academies, but they don't have a plan in place. Yeah, they speak against it. I'm from Long Island, so I am worried about Boston, and the academies out there it's getting crazy. And unfortunately, like I said, we have a coach in the National Women's Soccer League right now who owns an academy, who only 6-7 years ago sent out an email to all of his players, men and women, threatening them if they're involved in high school or anything else, there's going to be consequences. That's not a position that a family and a 12 and 13-year-old kid should be put in. But the problem is that the colleges and the pro teams, they're buying into it. There was just a college coach saying, I love going to the ID camps. I love going to those tournaments. They're not coming to the high schools. They're not getting down to the fields. So how do we engage them? How do we get them? We keep talking about grassroots soccer. But those high-end coaches aren't involved in grassroots soccer. So they're not there with the U9 kids. They're not getting involved. They're not promoting, the great experience that they have in high school, which, by the way, I will stop this whole ideology that high school ball stinks and that coaches do, because I'm 48. By the way, your national team was the favorite. Watching someone like Balboa play, we're the coaches now. We're not the phys ed teacher. It's not the math teacher that's assigned to coach a sport. We're D1 athletes. We're former professionals. They're getting the coaches that they need. But how do we get, MLS in my area affiliated with one of the semi-pro teams, and they're affiliated with the DA, and they're telling these kids, you're not allowed to do anything but be part of us. How do we change that? How do we get them part of the grassroots? We're our own problem, and there's a function across the hall where it says, let's start a school for our elite players?
Lex, you want to answer that?
It's all you, buddy. You took this ride, man.
No,
You're gonna
I'm kidding.
finish.
That was a joke. Look, I think that, again, this might stem completely from the idea that if you watched our team not qualify, and then you watched the press conference, it was amazing. Because 1 minute, our president took the stage, and so the question was proposed that, okay, what does this mean for our development of our players that our team didn't qualify? What can we do better in that space? And his answer was immediate. He said, the development of our players is and always will be the #1 priority for the Federation. 30 minutes later, Bruce Arena took the stage and he was asked the same question. And in typical Bruce, he said, I don't know why you guys think that the Federation should have anything to do with that. And what that meant is that we had two people completely on different, not even in different pages, they were in different books. The Federation has taken an interest or out of insecurity, or they want to manipulate, or they want the credit, but they've dived too far into this space. And the academies are not a fair representation of the talent. Now what happens is, those parents out there, and some of you might have kids that are playing in the academies, you've watched the reaction, haven't you? Let's say you have a club that isn't an academy, and you gotta get the phone call that the kid's gonna leave because he's going to an academy team. Because you've been told that you won't be scouted unless you're with the academy. That's it.
That's it.
Wait, he started to clap. You guys know the rule, right? No. I get it. No, my daughter said to me, this is a story, and let's go that route, because my daughter's 13. She's in the academy system, it's a DA system, and so there's 3 teams other than hers at that level, which is way too many. That dilutes everything. So I missed the game because I was working, and I had her the next day, and so she gets in the car, and she says, Dad, is the academy expensive? And I said, yes. And she said, huh. Because all the parents at the barbecue last night were talking about it. And they said it's really expensive. And now they're telling me that if I play high school, I can't be in the academy. What do I do? And my answer is, what do you want to do? Please say the other thing so I don't have to pay for it. No. She said, I want to play high school. I want to be with my friends. And then people have told her that she's, people have been in her ear and saying, you're good, you're going to be great, you're going to play in the Olympics, and all of that stuff. Playing on the heartstrings of our parents is a crime. It's a crime. We can't do that. We can't fill people's heads with dreams, especially when they're unfounded. Our kids need to enjoy the game. They need to express themselves, and they need to get the opportunity to play where they want to play. We've taken ourselves too seriously too soon, if that makes sense to you.
Throw it over there. Throw it over there. That poor quadrant over there is, feeling not a lot of love. There you go. He's got a big hand. It's coming. Let's just look. Incoming. Oh, God. All right.
Coach Kano, longtime college soccer coach. I wanna maybe, Lexi, you can jump in on this, but pro soccer, ex-pro player as well. Way back when I played, 2 Americans had to play, Mr. President. And when I played in goal, that left 1 guy out, and that was usually an American. I watch the MLS now. We've got guys from everywhere, which is great. This is America. They all can play here. But where's our American guys that are playing constant or consistent? Because I don't see any difference watching the MLS back in 78, 79, 90, in the ASL as well. It's still very few American guys. Except for the good ones that are going across, which is great. What's the answer to get more guys so I can go watch Americans? Thanks.
Well, I mean, look, and this is where the Federation, understanding its role as a support system to the clubs. I mean, let's think about this, just for a second. We didn't qualify, right? Okay, who did? Honduras, Costa Rica, and Panama. The guy that scored the goal for Panama plays for Seattle. Now, I'm not saying that that's his fault. I'm not going to go that route. But the truth is that we have still found ourselves in a mentality that we need to go abroad or we need to go somewhere else. That's probably for the creative side of things. Like we need the number 10 aspect or whatever you want to go with. That's our fault. That's our fault because at the youth level, we are not allowing these kids to express themselves. We're churning out robots and then complaining about it later. We're creating kids that are playing 6 or 7 different positions and they don't have an identity. I can guarantee you that if you were to pick your 5 favorite players all time or right now or whatever, they are very different from each other. Very different. Well, some people like Messi, some people like Ronaldo, some people like Eden Hazard, but they're different. Why? Because they're specialists. Because they're who they are. And that happened a long time ago. I said this last week and I still believe it. It is not hard. It's actually fairly easy to discover talent in this country. The problem is it's even easier to destroy it. And that might be our biggest problem.
So you think it's a question of, it's not a question of talent? Because in this situation the gentleman's bringing up, you have MLS teams that are making business decisions that they feel that's what's appropriate for their business and for their customers, and that's who are going to buy tickets and that's what they're going to watch.
Maybe, but look, nobody believes in the American player more than I do. I want to make that very clear. I am not having a go at the talent level of what this country provides, and I think Barcelona's academy is clearly proving that the rest of the world is recognizing. Germany is here more than we are. They're watching our games, and they're not watching the academy games. They're just not.
But as president, how would you change that? You can't just tell MLS you have to play American players.
No, you can't. You can't ever tell a business to, who they're going to play. But this is a broader issue. This is the problem with the way that we produce players and the way that we address the professional level. Again, if you only cater to 23 teams, you are disservicing the rest of the nation. You're disallowing. This country is about opportunity, and we are standing in the way of it. That just blows me away. And I guarantee you that there are 11 players out there who would be a great version of a national team. But I can also guarantee you this, you're not going to find 11 out of 18 markets. You're going to find it in 1,800, now we got a chance.
And when you say cater, just to make everybody it clear, you're talking about MLS, regardless of promotion relegation, but you're saying that the United States Soccer Federation caters to MLS.
Monday morning table.
Got it, all right. I just want to make sure. You got time for a couple more? Because we're at time, but you got time for a couple more?
Absolutely.
All right.
Wait, isn't that what the president's supposed to do? Listen? That's the one thing. He laughs about this, but when you want to become president, here's how it works.
You're asking your own questions now.
The surprise, you and I talked about this. You sleep less, you think more, you talk less, and you listen more, and you don't wear flip-flops on an airplane. That's true. That is true. That's how my life has changed. And you're no longer, if you're going to be president, you're never allowed to sit in an airport and charge your phone on the floor. It's not very presidential. I stopped.
It's bad look, huh?
I stopped doing that.
Where's the microphone? Do we know
Right
where
over
it is?
here.
Way over
Right
there.
over here. Over here.
Wow.
Is there so? Oh, there.
My question is, with all the responsibilities, the time requirements, and everything else that goes along with the presidency, first of all, do you, at the standard of living that you're at, whatever it is, will you be able to put in the time and effort? Number one, and number two, should the president of the United States Soccer Federation be paid?
All right, so let's just address this. I'm sure some of you've read the New York Times. I think that one of the things that I would say about that is the fact that I'm now in the best financial position I've ever been in my life and applying for a non-paid job because I care about the game. That's the space I'm in right now. Now, do I have the time? You make the time. that's a necessary part of this job. And the one word that, you know, your first question out of the chute, Lex, is, what have you learned? I've learned that this federation does not serve its members. It doesn't. It's kind of the other way around. There's an expectation there. And changing the culture, sir, is a necessity. And you do that through commitment. And my commitment is 100%. I also want to thank my wife, who's actually here. Which, look, when you don't have the support of your family, and I got a big one, you know, it wouldn't have worked. But I think that this is just too damn important.
Couple more? Anybody? Who's got the microphone? If you don't have the microphone, I can't call on you. Is it? Oh, there it comes. Coming in. Incoming. Incoming. Hope it hits somebody that actually wants to ask a question. Put your hand up if you want to ask a question.
There you go.
Wait, I got a question for Alexi. Lex, I got a question.
You got a question?
In the entrance of transparency,
Yeah.
Is this a sponsored event, and are you profiting?
I am not profiting on it. This is out of the goodness of my heart right now that I am up here.
That box thing.
I don't know. What is that?
Just making
What does
sure.
it say?
Just want to make sure you're.
Does somebody that wants to have a question have it? Do you
Yes.
have a question?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
Legend.
You can talk into it. Just talk into it.
He
That's
just
right.
talked to the box.
Believe me, I
Yeah.
didn't know either.
Okay. You're running for president,
Yes.
and I heard a lot of good things about the development of the game, the development of players. But what makes you better president than, or your president and your team, the political team, better than the existing team right now or other people that are running for president?
Okay.
That's number one. Number
Can I answer
two.
that first? Can I?
Yes.
Because, okay, I have no intentions of replacing the team that I currently have. I mean, just because the number 2 guy from Nike and a guy that has 20 years in the finance space and 20, I don't know how old are you, Craig? He's probably got 30 years in this game. These are people, these are experts around me that I've already created a board. That doesn't mean that that board replaces the board. The current board that we have right now might be malfunctioning, but it is my job to work with them. That is never the assumption that I would be replacing anybody. So let's make that very clear.
Just replacing the president.
The president's job is to answer to the board. So
Okay.
the current board, and we know who those people are, and I had breakfast with Dan Flynn this morning. And I think that the important part of that is, again, being a listener and being someone who can provide good ideas, but is still going to always answer to a board. So I am not going to address the job the way it has been previously addressed.
Eric, along the same line, you're going to need the votes of the States Association to become president. I haven't heard you say anything about that. How are you going to get the State Association to support you?
I don't think I didn't say that. I think that the state associations clearly recognize this opportunity. And in all of my conversations, and I think I was well, there's a story behind that, but the nominations and the conversations and the relationships that I now have with our state associations would indicate that I'll probably get more of the vote than anybody. And that's probably a fact. And I can't run the numbers for you right here, sir, but the reality is I've done more work to understand what the state association's needs are. That's that listening part. And because of that, I do believe that will represent the majority of my voting. Does
Okay?
that make sense?
Yes. Last question. What happened to the Cosmos and that old league?
What happened to the Cosmos?
Yeah, and that there was a league there at one time. Is it still a league?
It's an ongoing process, and we're gonna have to wait that one out. I'm still hanging on to hope. It would be a shame to see. It would be a shame to see. My biggest fan has spoken. There he is. It would be a shame to see that the storied franchise not be able to play professional soccer.
Do you think U.S. soccer's, to a certain extent, culpable and to blame for the situation that
No,
the
it's not
NSL finds
pointing
itself in?
fingers and blaming, but I do think that the whole process could have been handled better. Yeah. And that's, you know, and I don't think that, you know, the NASL should be exonerated from blame if that's what that's word we're going to use. However, I do believe that there's a lot of good people that lost their jobs for the wrong reasons. So, again, competitive merit should be what's dictating who stays and who goes.
You want to say anything before we head off?
Thank you for being here, especially those who are voting. Do the right thing, please. I believe in. If I had to send a message to all of you, it would be one of hope. I am one of you. I am a product of this ecosystem that has spit out a player that was given so much from this game, and that the last thing in the world I want is to fail you now. I believe in us. I believe in our future. I believe that if we address this the right way, we involve the right people, and we pool our assets for once, and we all are on the same page, who knows what we can do? This is our time. We have to recognize it, embrace it, and finally be a world power in this game. On all levels, we can do it. Thanks for having me.
You're going to stick around? You're going to stick around and talk to people? All right.